You're listening to Catalyst Talks, conversations with change agents, outliers, superheroes, and truly conscious leaders modeling what it is to be an unstoppable force for good in this world. What lit these catalysts on fire to do their work, and what nuggets of wisdom can they share with a world literally on fire? This podcast is for you who cares deeply and seeks to catalyze the world. I'm your host, Stephanie Trager. I'm a consciousness catalyst and soul coach to superstar change agents in business, leadership, and life. In this podcast, I wear an eclectic mix of hats, including Earthkeeper, healer, mindset coach, lawyer, business, sustainability, and impact strategist. My intention is holding space for higher purpose, peak wellness, and soul mastery so we can live in harmony with ourselves, each other, and nature. The whole idea of Catalyst Talks in these conversations is to awaken consciousness, unlock higher purpose, and learn what it really takes to catalyze change and at scale. Subscribe to our new podcast and help us grow. We're aiming to reach 1 million people at least in 2020. Let's wake up the world together. My guest on today's Catalyst Talks episode is Yanik Silver. We first met, we had instant resonance. There's total alignment here, and I'm excited to share this conversation where there's just so many wisdom nuggets from someone who has created so much incredible cosmic beauty in this world. Yanik has been called a cosmic catalyst, a maverick mischief maker, a galactic goofball. He redefines how business is played in the 21st century at the intersection of evolutionary growth, impact, and fun. Yanik is the creator of the Cosmic Journal, author of Evolved Enterprise, and the founder of Maverick 1000, a global collective of visionary entrepreneurs making a serious difference in the world without taking themselves too seriously. In fact, it's not unusual to find Yanik dressed in as a lemur, a showgirl, or even in matching mermaid tails with Sir Richard Branson. And with that, I'm excited for you to have a really awesome time listening to this episode. And we do share some references to the Cosmic Journal, and you can find those in the show notes at catalysttalks.com. And you can also find ways you can connect with Yanik there. Hello and welcome, Yanik Silver. Thank you so much for being here. I am so grateful on Catalyst Talks podcast to be hosting a conversation with the cosmic catalyst himself. And, you talk about the cosmic alarm clock going off, and I would love for you to explain what the cosmic alarm clock is and when yours went off.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have this idea or concept I call the cosmic alarm clock, where it's kind of like you have this little voice that's whispering in your ear, and it gets louder and louder until you either answer it or you hit snooze and go back to sleep. And I feel like we've all had that voice, and it shows up at multiple times. And so this cosmic alarm clock moment is like asking you to really step forward, usually into something unknown. It's usually something that's probably scary. I say following your heart is usually scary, but never wrong. And it's like I've been working with entrepreneurs trying to help them align their head, their heart, their higher purpose. And it's almost like, what were you meant to do here? And what do you, and one of my entries in the Cosmic Journal says, bloom where you're planeted. And we can talk about that one later on, because that was an interesting one, how that came about. But we're planeted here on Earth. Like, what did we come down here for? What was the reason? And I know that might sound way, big and lofty, but that's the way I feel with this cosmic alarm clock. It's almost like, okay, what were you designed to do? And especially like when you are someone that has a lot of resources, a lot of capacity, a lot of network connections, a lot of talent, opportunity coming at you, then it becomes a little bit harder to say, okay, what really is mine to do? Because I have all these things I could say yes to, but what is truly mine? And this cosmic alarm clock, it really hit me when I was probably about, the one that I think the most about, and if I look back, there's probably been multiple times, but the one that I most resonate with is probably about 12 years ago now, maybe 13 years ago, where I had been in the digital internet marketing world for a while. I started in 2000. I thought I was actually late. But I was probably one of the first in that first wave, and did really, really well. And then I started teaching other people how to take their information and expertise and sell that, which is what I had been doing. And then I just asked myself a really simple question, which was, am I happy? Would I be happy doing what I'm doing for 10 years from now? And when I was honest, the answer was no, right? But outside looking in, very successful, had a lot of money coming in, driving a hot sports car, great family, had a a really great reputation in that space, which isn't the easiest to do. And so outside looking in, everything looked great. Plus, what made it interesting was that I was helping a lot of people. So it was like close, but it wasn't quite there. And it feels like the further and further you climb up the mountain, if you use that analogy, it becomes more, not treacherous, but you have to continue giving up what is good to make way for what is really great. And that was that first part of really exploring what that is.
So what was your information? What was your digital marketing business about in 2000?
Yeah, so the internet marketing world was, I started with something called instant sales letters, which are little fill in the blank sales letter templates, and those are still available. And they've continued to sell for like 20 years.
But wait a second. So what made you start that? So the year 2000, what were you
Yeah.
doing when you were like, okay, I'm going to get on this? Because I want to know, a lot of people said that, and not everyone had success.
Yeah, well, it was an idea that came at 3:00 in the morning, literally. And I jumped out of bed and got to work on it. And I believe your questions dictate your answers, right? So I had been sort of thinking about this question, which was, I have to go back, I haven't thought about it in a while. It's something like, how do I create a fully automated revenue source that makes me money while I sleep and is an incredible value to people? Something like that. And I literally jumped out of bed at 3:00 in the morning. So my background, maybe should go back a tiny bit. So our family came over from Russia in 76. We were one of the first waves of Russian Jews to come over. And my dad came over with like $256 in his pocket for me, my mom, and my grandmother. And then he very quickly built a medical equipment sales and service company. He basically got fired from the hospital center he was working at because he was moonlighting on the side, repairing medical equipment for some of the private doctors. And so he also followed that scary path of like just, that entrepreneurial journey. And so I grew up working in that business. I was 14 years old in telemarketing. 16, the deal was I got a car if I went out and cold called. So I was cold calling 50-year-old, 60-year-old doctors and I'm this little 16, 17-year-old punk. And then I got a Jay Abraham tape that kind of turned the lights on for me for direct marketing. And I was just like fascinated by this idea that you could get people to raise their hands or be interested in something without ever talking to them. So I could be like, oh, I don't have to cold call anymore. And I just wanted to learn everything I possibly could. I got into like self-development, like Earl Nightingale and I don't know, you name it. Like I would listen. So Earl Nightingale, I learned about if you study for 1 hour a day for 3 years, you become an expert. If you study for 1 hour a day for 5 years, you become a world expert. And I'm like, oh, what would happen if I like learn this idea of copywriting and psychology for 1, 2, 3 hours a day? And I just found it so fascinating. And then I helped build my dad's business from a little regional player to a national player through those ads and through that direct marketing. And then I had doctors calling me and be like, oh, what do you like the marketing stuff? Maybe you can help me. So then I started helping them grow their practice, which turned into me selling information because I knew there was a limited amount of leverage in consulting to sell information to help their practice, help them get more cosmetic patients. And then that turned into me looking at the internet and I'm like, oh, this is fascinating. I kind of know, I can make this thing work. I had already created a bunch of letters. I had done other client work for doctors, other client work for like friends and relatives in all industries. And I'm like, what could I create? And that was what came out of it. So
at what point did you have the pivot where your book evolved enterprise? What point did something wake up in you around purpose and recognizing that was your call?
I really think I don't know if there's like any one point I can go back to because I feel like it's always been part of my world and part of my journey. But it's been in different, different amplitudes, I guess. Right. So I look back and I think about, I did this one seminar, my very first seminar in the internet space. It was called Yanik's 30th birthday bash. And I came up with the idea like in August and my birthday's in September, but by the time I could get it together, it was January. So most people thought my birthday was in January, but it was for my 30th birthday. And we had like 500 people there and we made it a whole charity event. It was $50 to get in the door, all to Make-A-Wish. So we raised $25,000 for Make-A-Wish. And then I had, a bunch of my friends and people that were doing really cool stuff online come and share what they were doing. And so like looking back, I'm like, there was always these little pieces. And then in another event that I ran for 10 years, for a decade, it's called the Underground. It was like bringing in unknown people to share what they're doing online. And, we had a lot of fun with it and made it an experience. It was a spy theme. We did, everything from like Austin Powers to James Bond to, you name it. And we had a lot of fun with it. But I had a $10,000 check I put up of our own money for the speaker that presented the best information. So it's like, it's always been like parts of what I've done. And what's interesting though, so, let me like kind of fast forward the story of the cosmic alarm clock where, so when I started Maverick, the idea that in my journal, the essence of it was make more, have more fun, give more. So it's these little 3 interconnected circles of a dollar sign, a happy face, and a heart. And originally I'm like, okay, what would make me happy? Be like, oh, hanging out with other awesome entrepreneurs I love. We'd be doing amazing adventures and trips, and we'd have business sessions out in the middle of nowhere, and we'd have a charity component. So like the essence of it has continued to remain the same. But then about $400,000 in, my wife is like, so what the hell are you doing?
So wait, for those who don't know what Maverick is, can you tell us?
Yeah, well, it's different now. So originally it started as an adventure travel company where it's called Maverick Business Adventures, and kind of MBA for short. And it was those things. It was like we took people on dune buggy racing, or we'd fly big jets, or we'd have these entrepreneurs, and then we'd have business sessions, and there'd be a charity component or some sort of teaching of young entrepreneurs. And then $400,000 in, my wife was like, okay, what is this? And I'm like, I don't know, because the internet company was kind of paying the bills for that. And it was the first time. So before this, I had like 7 or 8 different product services that all hit the 7-figure mark, really without me breaking a sweat, just leaning into whatever idea I had. And then this is like the first time things weren't going well, or at least in that aspect. And it really forced me to look at, okay, what's my bigger why? And the bigger why wasn't to build an adventure travel company. It was what we say now, change the way businesses play. And so it really forced me to look at our vision and look at what we're doing. And even like, so during this time changing up, like I went through kind of a dark time, because many times as an entrepreneur, you're connected, your identity is so deeply connected to, your self-worth is connected to your net worth, your success of your company is so directly tied into who you are. It was the first time that things were kind of going sideways. And it really, when I couldn't make it work the normal way, it forced me to almost like go back into a state of surrender and a state of reconnecting to spiritual practices and stuff that, like, as a kid, I was really into, like sacred sites and the pyramids and all sorts of like parapsychology and, you name it. I was into anything unusual and weird. Though I love weird, by the way. Weird is a great term, because from the actual term of it means, I think from Middle English, means something like path of destiny. But it's like, so I love weird. And then I kind of put all that away with the marketing side. And then now it was like reignited. And so it really forced me to look at what was I doing? And that was a really interesting, difficult time.
What happened next?
I did a lot of continual soul searching and journaling, and so that was where the Evolved Enterprise really came from, was almost going out of business, but learning from all these different people, like some very high level business celebrity icons that a lot of people would know, but then also a lot that most people might not know, and getting all these little pieces of what this framework was for Evolved Enterprise, which was, starting with yourself and evolving yourself, and then moving into what's the cause, what do you care about the most? That literally, like, one of my favorite questions during this time period was, what would I do even if I knew it would fail? So, from Brené Brown's book, Daring Greatly, she talked about that. And then it also is like correlated to this other concept. I love this book called the Great Work of Your Life, a guy named Stephen Cope. Not that many people have maybe seen that or read that. Have you seen that one?
No. It's
really good. So he's a yogi, and he basically takes the Bhagavad Gita and like analyzes people's lives when they essentially are in their dharma. So people that we would know, like Mandela and Susan B. Anthony and Harriet Tubman and so forth, but then other, quote unquote regular people, but how they find this. And that question of what would I do even if I knew it would fail really taps into this key concept, or one of the key concepts of the Gita, which is like, you're only entitled to your labor, but not the fruits of your labor. And so it's like, how do we, and especially as entrepreneurs, like, how do we disattach from what are the results? What are the numbers of, of what this thing is? And so the evolved enterprise was really part of that process of, okay, what would I give my life's energy towards or into, even if I knew it would quote unquote fail. And so that's when this idea of this intentionality. So I asked, again, I love questions, right? So I asked, what would my 111-year-old self tell me? And the answer was, light 1,000 suns who each have the capability to light another 1,000 suns. And that's when we changed the name to Maverick 1000 to accurately represent that. It really changed the intention and the direction of what we were doing. I remember really specifically, like, we had one of our summits. Usually we have our summit, it used to be in December, and it would be like the first week in December. And this is for all our members, these entrepreneurs and leaders. And I'm like, no, 2012 was coming up. I'm like, we have to be in the Mayan Riviera and for the winter solstice. And my team's like, are you crazy? Like, that's 4 days before Christmas. And I'm like, no, we have to be there. And literally they were able to turn on a dime, get things together. And we had an event there and spent the night in the Mayan Riviera in the Mayan village. And that was like really this changing of this trajectory of where we're going. And then it changed, like the essence of what we're doing remained the same, but the expression really changed, where even like the dollar sign changed now into a tree. So it's all about growth, evolutionary growth, and impact, and then joy. So you still have the happy face in the heart, but it's changed.
This is so funny because I'm literally looking at right now your 2020 predictions, and a friend of mine actually sent it to me, and I am looking at prediction number 20, which says, many ancient civilizations predicted periods of great darkness followed by light. And when I'm focused on you, but I'm looking at this, and my eyes kept going to the Mayans, and then you just said the Mayan Riviera. So yeah, this prediction, like, let's just go with that for a second, because prediction.
Yes. That's the last page in my cosmic journal. And I'm happy to give your readers a page that they can look at, and I'll share some images and illustrations and stuff like that. But this is something that I've been really intrigued by, which is this roughly 26,000 year cycle. So a lot of people know about precession and this idea that the earth wobbles and it changes. Yep, there you go.
I just held up my journal.
So it changes its space in where the poles are pointing to. But so there's a lot of different ancient people, civilizations that talked about this. So, there's been a golden age, a silver age, bronze age, iron age. And a lot of people believe that history is a very linear concept. However, I'm of the impression that everything is cyclical, that there's cycles within cycles and then greater cycles. So if you look at, easy to understand, day and night, it's a cycle that continues each day, 24 hours. Then we have the seasons. That's another cycle that continues, right? And then, but these cycles are larger and larger. And the Mayans, for what, why were they keeping track of 13 different calendars? And especially one that was, I think their largest one is something like 5,260 years, give or take. And that was, if you multiply that by 5, that roughly equals the math of what precession is. And so they were tracking these significant dates for a particular reason. And I really think that there's evolutionary changes that happen. And so we are right now, and I feel like we're really in this period. So a lot of people thought 2012 was either the end of the world or like the beginning of this new age, and it'd be like a light switch moment. And I don't totally believe that. I think that it's been coming, like you feel it, like the last couple of years for sure. Like, I think even conversations like this and like the entrepreneurs that I work with, like if you would have asked them, how many of you meditate 5 years ago, would have been like 10% of the room or 15% of the room. Now it's like 80%. How many, so it's been like this ascending level of consciousness that I'm feeling into. And then as more and more of it pops off, you light other people up, and then there's going to be a tipping point that occurs for sure.
I love that. One of the things that I've been writing about for, I've been working on a book for a long time, and one of the things I think about a lot is, and I talk about this, is the mainstream effect. So like even meditating or even spiritual practices, mindfulness, yoga, like so many ancient practices that are super, super deep. When they're mainstream, they get watered down quite a bit. And so for the last few years, even the sustainability movement, right? So once things are mainstream, they're just watered down. So what I've been curious and sort of a little bit infatuated with witnessing witnessing the impact of that. And I feel like where we are right now is March, when we're having this conversation, it's March 27th, 2020. And we are in the great midst of an energetic shift, shifting paradigm. And so right now it's fascinating to see that even with the water down, right, there's still this massive, massive cosmic shift. And I feel like personally, this jolt right here that we're in right now is to ramp up to unwater it down. You know what I'm saying? To like bring it back to purity, because people might have their practices, but they have to go deeper now, or have to reassess like why was I doing that and it wasn't working, or it wasn't working well enough. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Let's talk about that a little bit. And then as you're talking about this watered down aspect, there's one thing that came to mind for me, is, I've studied a little bit. I'm definitely not a master at this, but like the spiral dynamics and integral theory, right? Where it's basically like different levels of society and consciousness. And then the highest level basically takes the best of each piece. And I feel like when you said watered down, that to me is what it's been feeling like a little bit. Like it's so interesting, because I think there's even like if you take, so one of my predictions was about like plant medicine and decriminalizing nature and so forth. And there's been a massive renaissance really going on in that space. But I think that it can go too far. And that maybe is what we're the watering down. I totally agree with you. Let's like somebody becomes a shaman from doing 5 ceremonies or something like that. Like to me, that's like unfathomable. I think you can help maybe hold space for others, but to be there before there was a lineage and there's a way of passing this down. And one of the other predictions that I talk about is a guru-less movements. So I don't think that same energy of like, oh, beholden to the guru and I have to wait for my, I don't know, my being christened the next guru. Like, I don't believe in that either, but I do think that there's a level of non-mastery that is showing up, that they're like, oh yeah, I can do this, and holding out my shingle as that part. So that watered down part really resonates with me there. The other part that I'm seeing that was kind of brought in by that conversation was taking in like I think there has to be a merger of modern whatever with ancient wisdom. So let's say modern science, whatever, like modern whatever, but merging, and that becomes a new thing. And I don't think that's a watered down version. I think that's a new expanded version.
Yeah, I love that you're saying this, because I think that one time I was studying, I was with a medicine woman, an elder in Ecuador, and she was teaching. I was a student. She was my teacher, and she kept on saying to me, like, don't doubt. When that moment of doubt is death. The moment of doubt is death. So you have to step up and do it and be it and hold it. And so and I always think of her. I always think of that. And at the same time, there's this like really fine line of humility and,
Right.
yeah, I mean, that's a whole, tunnel
No,
in itself.
that's a really good, it's a really great conversation too, because that humility is, so I have something in here that I wrote on my birthday that made me cry, and I wrote it with my left hand, so my non-dominant hand. It's actually the page right before this, about we were just talking about the cycle, the 26,000 year cycle. It's a page right before, and it says, who are you to play smaller? Who does that serve? Not you, not the world. It's a false humble. Your joy is in full service. It only requires your full effortless effort to totally embrace and align with your destiny, not in an ego way, but as fulfilling the greatest service to the collective, and the byproducts are immense. So, and then not many people know this, and I'll show this to you because we were just talking about this, but that little symbol there is a Mayan eagle, and it's the Mayan glyph called Men, M-E-N, and it really represents this idea of soaring with eagles and seeing and having a greater vision. And the woman who created that oracle deck, it's called the Mayan Oracle deck. It's really powerful. A woman named Ariel Spilsbury. She's super cool. She's kind of like this fairy godmother. And I just recently had a chance to connect to her, and that's been really, really fun. So that to me, there's also like a false humble. And I feel like I've gotten into that before too. It's like, oh no, because it's like not fully illuminating who we are is not serving the world. And it's like, we want to be like, no, I don't, I don't need that attention or whatever that is. But there has to be a way, like I see this with, let's not name names, but people would understand who I'm talking about. There's different world leaders that are very confident without having anything to back up that confidence. And aside from their own just trust, like you said, and it's more than trust, it's like a warped reality field. But it's amazing to see because they get things done that match that warped reality field. And so it's like, but if we're in greater service to the collective, to the whole, to the earth, to our cosmic journey, and we use some of that same trust or same confidence, imagine what happens then.
Yeah. And for those of you listening, you're not able to see what we're talking about, but we'll post a link where you can see the Cosmic Journal. You can access the Cosmic Journal that Yanik has. It's a beautiful creation, and that's what we're referring to here. So you should get your copy, and then you could look at and listen along and turn the pages. It is a really beautiful work of art. But to that point, that I think that is such a good point, because you work with really successful entrepreneurs. You hold space. You are a creator in a huge creations of cosmic creations, and it takes that level of confidence. It takes a level of yes, I am the one to do this, right? And when it comes to things like the ancient wisdom and really holding space for, like when we're talking about shamans and plant medicine, these are things that are so anchored. They're multidimensional, right? And these are like, when it's one thing to create things in the 3-dimensional reality, and it's like, yeah, we're all here created. We're all here with the same playing field. Well, when we're talking about the multidimensional spaces, I feel like we are right now in a moment in time where we need more people who are holding space for the galactic reality, for the multidimensional reality of now, and really be able to hold that and speak about that and teach that and invite others to experience it. And there's a level of responsibility. We all have a responsibility not to abuse our power, right? A level of responsibility to really know where your information is coming from, right? And sometimes it's just yourself, and maybe you're a channel, and we need to trust ourselves if we're channels. And we're holding information that is useful to others right now. But then there's like that responsibility for how we hold it. So I think it always comes down to that, right? The responsibility of how we hold it. And if it's if it's something that is tied to a lineage, an ancient lineage that has its own way of passing things along, we have to have respect for that. And I think you can see that. You can see that with people. Like you don't have to try to be humble. You either are, and you just show up that way, or you're not, right?
Yeah. I think that you're going to see an acceleration. So I always shared with people I was teaching, way back about entrepreneurship, and originally when I was teaching them how to make money online or whatever, one of the things I talked about was that money amplifies who you are. And I feel like we're in an amplification moment. So if you are a person of service and who is really connected to what is the greater purpose and how do you serve the collective, you're going to have more amplification in that way, and allies will be showing up in resources in ways, that you never even expected. And then if you're more self-serving, and it's like, I always said that, money can make you much more of a jerk, or it can give you a much more altruistic, philanthropic kind of aspect to to who you are, and even broader. So that's definitely what I'm seeing. And then the other piece that you hit on that I think is really interesting is that I think that you yourself have the answers that you need. It's just ways of tapping into it. So whether it's like this, this journey work or medicine work or deep meditation work, or, a lot of these ancient practices have been handed down to us because they work. But I do believe that, I don't know how many people are right now, 7.3 billion or whatever it is right now. I think that there's 7.3 billion ways that are all unique based on who you are and what you resonate with. But they all lead to the exact same place, which is one.
Yes. We're done now. We covered all bases.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I think, if we all were to, if we were all to really wake up to our deep inner wisdom that was ours to channel or bring in, and maybe that's not everyone's role here, right? We all have different roles, but
yeah, right.
Yeah, right now,
different frequencies and different. I don't know. We bring something different to the table. That's why we're this beautiful mosaic of this cosmology brought to life.
And in your communities, have you seen are people typically stick with you guys for multiple years? So you see people.
Yeah, well, it's interesting, right? Because Maverick's been around now for 11 years, and like I said, originally it was more like a bit adventure travel stuff, and now it's become much more about what's your evolutionary growth and what's yours to do, and what's your real destiny, and so forth. So some have stuck through that whole cycle because that's really been my cycle, and some have dropped off, and some have come back in. Some have, new ones have come, So I always believe that the right people are in the right rooms at the right time, and that's what I truly, truly believe. So the only thing I can do is put out what I'm feeling into right now, and continue to cut away what was before. And you and I were talking about this before we got online and recorded, is about, okay, how much of your truth do you want to reveal? And sometimes it feels scary, especially if you're in the business community, or anything like that, where you want to keep, I think back to Carl Jung, where he had his Red Book published after his death because he didn't want to show, what he was getting. It was all these downloads from the spirit named Philemon, and this entire thing really influenced pretty much all his concepts that he worked his entire life around. So, shadow work, archetype work, the collective unconscious, synchronicities, probably even more, were all from these downloads. But he didn't want to, psychology was kind of a fledgling science, and he didn't want that to look like it wasn't quote unquote scientific or whatever it was. And so to tarnish his reputation. But I think right now it's up to us to really come forth as the unique combinations of who we are. And as I've continued to lean into this, I even changed my bio to say, I think Maverick, Mystic, and Cosmic Catalyst, and Galactic Goofball, because I really want to lean into what is that.
When did you do that? How long ago?
I think when the Cosmic Journal came out. So it came out in November. So 4 months ago, I changed my bio and to just really step forth into a little bit more of that role. And you and I connected obviously over that word catalyst. It's such an interesting, beautiful word. So I think that's truly my archetype at the core essence level. And I talk about catalyzing the catalyst. That's the only thing I've wanted to do is okay, help bring the people together that have reach and leverage and voices and platforms and unique combinations, and be okay, how do we nudge them so that their consciousness can expand, so they can have greater ripples of impact? But then also, how do we utilize those channels in ways that there's leverage for moving the consciousness of the world by even 1 degree using the leverage of business?
You want to talk more about the 1 degree piece?
Yeah, it's been something that I literally have had down. I couldn't believe how long it had been in my journal. It's been 8 years that I've been continuing to get downloads about it. It's, this one time really clear in a meditation, I saw almost like a bank vault, right? You see how you sort of move the bank vault numbers. So I saw multiple like concentric circles, and then you turn those concentric circles based on the right key project that needs the right channel partners or the right brands involved, the right icons or the right impact partners and the right capabilities and talent. And you just like, okay, got it. And that's how it explodes.
And so what is it? So this is the vision.
What is it? Yeah. I mean, the 1 Degree Network, the real intention of it is, so I have a little 5-minute video at onedegreenetwork.com. It's been, I said that no matter what, I'm incubating it this year, 2020, because 2020 equals perfect vision. And so I feel like, so Maverick to me is one node within the 1 Degree Network. It's other people that have their own communities and are part of that as well. So it's really the intention is to nudge the consciousness of the world by 1 degree using the leverage of business. And the practicality of it is bringing together elders and wisdom keepers, or even like galactic wisdom keepers, so that they can help hold space for the earth and what's needed right now, or what's coming in for our next evolutionary story, and work with impact project partners, people that are on the ground doing amazing work with what the world needs right now, and then bring in together those people that have the reach and the leverage and the platforms and voices and influence to entrepreneurs, nudge their consciousness, and then they nominate the people that are the talented people that can be working on projects, or the key experts, and then also channel partners and even capital partners, which I know you work a lot in that space.
So what is your definition of a galactic wisdom keeper?
I don't know. So one of my friends, as I was telling him about the 1 Degree Network, it's like because it was originally just these elders and wisdom keepers of Earth, and he's like, well, you need the galactic wisdom keepers too. I'm like, yeah, you're right, I do.
Yeah, because you talk a lot about the galactic. You talk about that's your
right.
galactic goofball, right? So what is your connection to?
Exactly.
What is your connection to upstairs?
It's I don't know. I mean, as a kid, so I was a weird child, but weird good, I guess. And in like 6th grade Boy Scout camp, I remember getting my whittling merit badge, and I whittled a stick, but I turned it into like a ray gun, and I'd literally walk around camp going, pew, pew, pew. Need the snark from Snarf. And, I tell my wife this now, and she's like, please don't tell the kids. But the kids know about the, like, it's just like, for whatever reason, I just always have been connected to that in some way, right? And I don't know exactly what it is, but it's continued to show up. And even like this cosmic journal, like when I created that project, it was just for myself. It was 108 days every single night, just doodling, illustrating, handwriting a page. And when I hand it to people, I literally say, this is the galactic manual that you should have had written for you when you were born, or that you didn't get when you were born, to remember your destiny here on Earth. And that's the way I wrote it for myself. And so that's, this galactic wisdom keepers, I don't know, I think it's in the non-local, it's in the non-physical, but it's like ability to tap into spirit, really, but the spirit that comes from, I don't know, I mean, each, if you think about it, right, there's a new study that came out from, I think it was Penn State, might have been UPenn, but there's something like that. There's 60 billion Earth-like planets in the Milky Way alone, right? Like 60 billion with the B. And it's just like unimaginable that there's not something else out there. And so it's, for whatever reason, whether it's been on purpose that's been kept away from us, or we just haven't been able to connect with it in the quote unquote physical way, or like this way that, everyone talks about, a flying saucer has to land on the White House lawn for us to believe that something is happening. But I think that there's, actually, that was one of the predictions, talking about like there's going to be, I think, a period where you're going to be like, yeah, there's absolutely life out there. And
yeah, I really would love to speak to that, because since I was a very young person, I've actually had a connection. So
okay.
I'm hearing you. That's why I was asking you, well, what do you mean by that? Because there's, Yanik, I'm coming out of the closet in this conversation with you on
All right.
on
Yeah,
public
we
radio.
call it coming out of the attic. I heard that somewhere, and I really like that better.
I'm coming out of the yeah, yeah. I would just like to say I'm coming out of my own my
Yeah,
own identity shield. But the truth is
yeah, I
that
know.
this since this whole the energies of what we're experiencing, and I'm not naming it, but since what we're dealing with right now on the planet globally, collectively, where we're a bit shut down and in a whole different paradigm, this has been a lot stronger for me. It's a lot of galactic communication, and several people in my who also have this experience. We're all saying the same thing. We're all having the same experience, and we didn't know the other person had it either. You know what I'm saying? And so it
Mm,
is absolute, to me, it's absolute reality that there are other beings and entities and guides. I've had
yeah,
cosmic galactic guide. I never really refer to them as galactic. They're more of they're just in another dimension, but it's a galactic dimension. And
yeah,
there's a lot of support for us right now on this planet, and especially with what's going on. And there's this very clear message. It's like, we're not going to fix this for you. We're here to hold space for you for humanity to mature right now, because you've been like children running around on the planet. And I was telling you this the other day about the Kogi people. The Kogi are an
mm,
indigenous tribe in Colombia. And these people are so connected to the cosmos, and they've not been colonized. They don't have telescopes. They don't have a PhD in astronomy, and they know things about planets and galaxies that you'd need to have a PhD to know about, So I just love this conversation because
yeah.
it's
Well, I
totally
mean,
real.
depending on how comfortable we are, let's take it deeper. I think those galactic guides. It's so it was really interesting. I never was into Neil Donald Walsh. You know who that is?
Hmm.
Conversation with God. One of my good friends who passed, actually, when we did our call just a week ago, I mentioned him. He's got Jordan Guernsey, and he's in the Cosmic Journal too. But so he was really into him, and I'm like, not really into it. And then he came out with a new book called Awaken the Species, and that was maybe a year ago or something like that. And it was about like this invitation to help awaken the species, and I'm like, all right, you got me. Like that's a really interesting one. And he talks about getting like there's a lot of energy coming in, a lot of almost like intuitive insights that come through that are directed from these non-physical entities. He calls them highly evolved beings. And then I went back and read some of the other Conversations with God stuff and really enjoyed it. I thought it was great. And I think that there's so many ways of I think what you're saying that we have to figure it out. So I believe that we're in a free will context, right? So it's up to us to A, ask for aid, ask for assistance, and B, call in those guides, allies, totems, ancestors, spirit families, star councils. Like when I'm deep in meditation, I'm asking for help from a lot of different places, and then it's like I love the example of the butterfly. It's been used a lot, right? But the butterfly is such a perfect example of transformation, because when the caterpillar is in the chrysalis, it can't emerge. Like if you cut open the chrysalis, it's just going to be a big gooey mess. From what I've seen, it needs to fight against the chrysalis to break it open, and it needs to do it on its own so that it can emerge as the butterfly.
Yeah.
And that's what it's a true metamorphosis, and that's what we're going through. And that's what I think the aid is there when we call it in and ask for it. And then there are people that are, I think, more aligned than others, or like this is the work that we've been waiting for, or the time that we've been waiting for. Like this to me is a catalyst. It's a catalyzing time.
Hmm.
It's one of the greatest, I think, global catalysts to realize how interconnected we are as a species. This is not even a rich, poor thing or a country by country thing. Like it's a global thing. And it's an opportunity for us to realize that so many of the institutions that we've birthed or allowed to be birthed don't support us, aren't here for our ultimate self-sustainment and for thriving as a species. So it's up to us to decide what we want to do there.
I love that. I love the metamorphosis, because right. You can feel it, right? It's like we were talking about this before also, where I don't know, every day I wake up, these last few days of waking up, I feel like I woke in, there was like a whole metamorphosis going on while I was sleeping. And I think it is because of being really choosing to be in that moment of surrender during all of this, instead of being like really just latching on to some reality, like someone's definition of what's happening, to really surrender into the metamorphosis that's happening.
Right. And that's a beautiful, yeah, like it's like a catalyzing time. And I think that we need, there's a reason, like so in these predictions, I talk about like how indigenous wisdom is going to become more and more valuable. Like this is the time that many cultures have predicted and prophesized about a new coming age. So we need that wisdom, because those different cultures knew how to live in harmony with their environment and the world, and we need that. And then I also think we need this galactic wisdom to be called in. And you asked me who is a galactic wisdom keeper, and I don't know exactly. Like I can't point to anyone and be like, yeah, that's them. But maybe it's a lineage that's simply through the stars that you can only like pick up through, I don't know, in an intuitive way, or through a cellular way, or through meditation, or even ceremony work.
Maybe we all are, if we open up and are willing to
Yeah,
receive
right.
it.
Right. I mean, we're literally, everything is made out of stars. It's
Yeah.
literally an exploding star that created everything that we see here. And my kids think I'm really out there when I start talking about all this stuff, but they do like it in a weird way. But it's it is fascinating to like just think about that, and then also to consider, like this non-physicalness of everything, like whether it's energy or vibration or sound, or even like quantum entanglement, like things like that. Like it's like oh, like there's so much that we think is real, but it's not quote unquote real.
Yeah. I always say this, there's so much more happening in the invisible. So every time it feels like really hard, or it feels like you can't figure something out, it's just like pause, step back, and remember there's so much more happening in the invisible.
Yeah. And it's subtle, right? So to
Mhm.
me, the subtleness, you can tap into that. The clearer you are, the more aligned you are, the more intentional you are. That's when you tap into it. And that, that works for practical things too, like the direction that you want to go with your business, or whatever it is, your vision. Like, to me, that's where it comes from. And so it was interesting. Like, one of the pages I wrote in there was about, like, is drinking derailing your destiny of greatness? And talking about how a lot of entrepreneurs and people I know that are incredibly smart and have big visions for things, like they might drink too much or other things, and then it clouds their vision, because it's just a way of like toning down their brilliance, and a little bit like what we talked about, like this humbleness.
Mhm.
So I think the clearer we can be, and that's not to say that I don't drink at all, or like there's, but I have a new, like, my awareness around it is much more about consciousness, like intentionality around everything, or not, probably not everything, but more and more about everything I do is more intentional, right? So it's like deciding, okay, do I want that drink that enhances this meal in some way, or is this or is it simply more of a habitual thing, or is it, and literally everything too, like when you come into a meditation, like what's the intention behind that meditation? Sometimes it's just, I just want to sit in silence and just, tap out for a little while. But sometimes it's like, yeah, I want insight, or I want, and I think that's all been practice for what's showing up.
Mm, that's so beautiful. One of the things I love that you offer on the Cosmic Journal website is the oracle. I'm not looking at it, so I don't remember
Uh-huh.
exactly, but the oracles, where you can actually like
Yeah.
click on it, and it'll send you the Tuesday oracle or something like this. And so I want to play Cosmic Journal Oracle with
Yeah, let's do it.
Yanik.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm going to open up a page, and I'm
Okay.
going to ask you a question based on what we received.
All right. Perfect.
Okay. And everybody, you got to see this journal. There's just so much good stuff in here. All right. Wow. I opened up to page 115.
Okay.
Dare greatly. What would be felt 300 years? What would be felt 300 years from now? Your greatest work stands the power of the centuries. What are you doing that will truly create your legendary legacy?
Yeah, that's a big one. So let's flip to that page real fast. So 115, dare greatly. So it came from, you see a little picture of a sword inside the stone, and it's like there's an acronym. So dare stands for discover. It's like really digging deep into who you are, and so whether it's assessment tests or different things like that, or making a list of all the things that really light you up and make you feel like you're in flow. So it's this really unique combination of your natural abilities and skills and talents. And then A stands for activate. So how do you activate that unique genius, and you stand fully in your voice and your power of what you're meant to be. And then you step forward and proclaim that. And then R is one of my favorite words I kind of made up, which is remember. So it's like, doesn't it feel like when you learn something and it has a deep resonance, you're like, oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that's this remembering piece. So it's like remembering who you are as this perfect and infinite spiritual being, experiencing this time and space, and then you're remembering your true mission here. And then the E is evolve. So it's like, and this is what I love working with entrepreneurs with. It's like, what is ground zero right now? It's like taking all their amazing success and what they've already achieved and their relationships and their talents and skills and whatever else, and that becomes the new ground floor for what is their next evolution. And usually it requires them and us to give up something too in that process. So you're usually not going to make that next evolutionary turn without giving up something, either forcefully or playfully, by leaning into it and allowing yourself to really evolve into that. So that dare greatly. And that also came to me, by the way, from non-dominant handwriting. So sometimes I'll do that. I learned it from a friend of mine, a guy named Bill Donius, who wrote a book called Thought Revolution, who learned it from a child psychologist, a woman named Lucia Carpacciano, I think is her name. But it's this really great, fascinating way that, as you mentioned, that you can be a channel or you can be an oracle, and we have the answers, but there's different ways of tapping into it. And one of my ways for sure is journaling. And so it's either, it can be a question. You take a question and just write it out with your regular dominant hand, but then use your non-dominant hand as well and answer it. Or you can literally have a Q&A. Like I've done this with like the universe. I've done it with a dragon. I've done it with a lot of different archetypes. And then you get some really unique insights where you write the question with your dominant hand and then you answer with your non-dominant hand.
You know what? I love this. I'm not done with this page yet for you, but I love that what you really model is that as somebody who's holding space for a lot of different projects, a lot of different people and things and businesses, that you really take this. This is part of it. This is the work, right? This is the play. This is your life. You take time to journal, doodle, draw, create, be creative, right? And that is, and a lot of people's excuse is I don't have time.
Yeah.
But back to you.
Yeah.
What are you doing that will truly create your legendary legacy?
Great question. I think that my legendary legacy, like you can't really dictate your legacy. It's the only thing that you can do is do the things every day that it's almost, there's a page in the journal, I forgot which page it is, but is based on, I have it up on that's what I'm looking up. I have it on my shelf up here as like a little bit of my altar. And it's basically the things that you do each day reflect who you are. And that's where your legacy comes from. And if I find it, I can read it, or I can just pull it off my shelf. Aha. All right. So it's page 173 and it says, teach the way by living the way. Right. So to me, it's, especially with the kids, right? So my kids are 14 and 12 and I can tell them something, or I can model it and show them. And like you said, I do the work, I play and I doodle and I draw and I tap into this galactic energy. And like, that's A, that's fun for me. And B, it's like, it just feels natural. And so I'm excited when the kids see me doing yoga, and I'm on a 108-day yoga challenge right now. I'm on day like 87 or something like that. And, or they see me meditating or whatever the case is. So this idea of teach the way by living the way. And it's just like, how do we continue to just show up in those daily pieces? And that shows up as our legacy eventually.
Well, you are definitely leaving large cosmic pieces of your legacy, and they're all over the internet, and we're going to share with everybody who who listens to this podcast on the page. We'll put all of the links to your amazing creations. You have a lot of wisdom, you have a lot of information, knowledge, and so much to give, and a giant heart. And so what would you, in this time that we're in, people are listening, people are in this meaning making process right now. I feel like everyone is really pulling together from their own conditioning, their own imprints, all that, and really trying to figure out what's going on right now from all walks of life. And what drop of wisdom would you want to share with the millions of people listening right now?
I think it's a really beautiful time to lean into really what your heart is telling you. And a lot of people haven't listened to that in a while, or they've kind of let it drop in it. And not from, so, I talk about connecting your head, your heart, your higher purpose, like all three are in alignment. And so the higher purpose is like this cosmic download, like your divine destiny. And what is that? And then the head part is, for me, it's the business side, it's the marketing side, it's that piece of it, and aligning all of it with the heart, the impact side. Then there's something really interesting, and allow yourself maybe to dream again. Maybe you've put away some dream or something that you thought wasn't practical. And I go back to a lot of people that I've studied or that I know, and so many times they're like, well, screw it. If I'm going down, I'm going to go down doing what I really want to do anyway. So let's just go do it. And right now it feels like there's this falling away. And so what is, like, one of my questions for last year was, what is truly mine to do? And that's a really interesting way of looking at not what can I do, but what is truly mine to do.
Thank you so much, Yanik, for being here and sharing so much of you. I'm looking forward to seeing your next evolution and the next evolution of your legacy impact. Really blessed to get to know you a little bit. So thank you for letting others in my community get to know you too.
Yeah, I appreciate that. A fellow catalyst to another catalyst. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Catalyst Talks. Stay tuned for what's up next, and please subscribe to our podcast wherever you listen. You'll find those links at catalysttalks.com. Join us. We continue this conversation on social media, and if you'd like to reach out to me privately, you can send me a message at stephanietrager.com. Your attention here means the world to me. Thank you, thank you, thank you.